All right, so the next one is San Jacinto College, and this one has a bioswale along the street. I'm not
Right,
sure
and
if
that is a retention area in the back, and it was really ugly. It was just really weeded. It didn't have any sense of design, and they wanted to put a deck out in the back overlooking that pond area. It would, different times of the year it would be higher and lower, but in that area we really did have a bioswale that functioned to drain most of that area to a stormwater sewer. We used the bioswale and the rain gardens in there in the bottom of the detention area to filter the pollutants that was coming from the entire site. So, I don't know, I'm not looking at it to show you exactly, but as it goes down to the very bottom, there was actually a filtering pipe that had, holes in it, that had the gravels and wrapped in the filter fabrics that was connecting the two culverts together, so on either side of that detention area.
so. Typically, when you work on a rain garden, does the civil engineer come back and recalculate the flow rates?
Yes.
Because I don't think they take into account the amount that the rain garden reduces the flow rate. Because sometimes they design the system first and then they have you do the rain garden, but they don't incorporate that into the calculations.
Right. Well, actually I would do the area. We work back and forth. So I would allocate the area, and then depending on how deep it would be, our cross sections would be determined by the civil engineer on how much water it needed to hold or it needed to convey. So it was a combination of a pipe, the size of the pipe, the width of the bioswale, the depth of the bioswale, and it had to do with the area that it was draining into. So it was all a calculation that we went back and forth designing until we got the right formula. And the main reason is that they could really reduce the cost of their stormwater systems by using the bioswales in combination with their drain systems. So it saved a lot of money that way.
And then Herod Elementary, I worked on the rain garden. So this one has 3 rain gardens. There's one around the deck in the back, behind the building.
Back.
Yeah, then there's 2 along the parking lot, and the parking lot has a tank. I remember one of the parking lots had a tank below it where the rainwater collected, right? And this was a LEED project, so all the water that collected was going to be reused for irrigation. So that was one of the requirements. Yeah, so because of the LEED certification, if the water is reused for irrigation, you get certain number of points. I don't remember, I think it's like 3 points or something. It depends on how much of the water for irrigation. Is it like 60% or 100% reused water? I think the rain gardens at the back, they were more like demonstration gardens. So you had...
They were more the classroom. It was classroom. Most of these were for classroom, but the front was for conveyance of the large parking lot in the front. So it was really used to absorb all that water and then use that for the irrigation. But also, I wanted to say, Ruhina, that what is really very important to do in these parking lots is to have these curb cuts. And as you can see, I have those cuts in certain places where the gravel is coming in. So it's conveyed into the bioswales. And a lot of times, if there's not a type of border coming from there, it will wash that, the actual planting bed out into that bioswale. And you have to, continuously redefine that bioswale. So borders are really important when you're talking about bioswales, but directing water, but you have to make sure that you put them in the right place.
All right, so here's Joanne's information. If you have any questions, she can be reached by phone or by email. All right, so my first introduction to a large-scale commercial project was on Great America Park, where they said that the lake that surrounds the new ride, which is the project that I worked on, was a saltwater lake. So it had brackish water. And that was the first time that I was looking at what kind of native plants or what kind of plants would be suitable, first of all, and some of the ones that I used. So the entire the lake had to be planted. So what I used was mainly a combination of saltgrass, alkali heath, a few lilacs, and a lot of Douglas iris. So these plants were all salt tolerant, salt spray tolerant. And they were also used to protect the slopes because the slopes were pretty steep. It was like 1-to-1 slope around the lake. So they had to be erosion control plants as well. And then a few of the residential jobs, a lot of times the developer does not want to have a rain garden with lots of messy looking plants. So what I've done is work on a combination of a no-mow lawn in a depressed area. So you can see there's a percolation pit that the civil engineer designed, slightly depressed, but I don't use too many different types of plants. I just, one type of normal grass. But I do try to incorporate pea gravel with a lot of permeable paving. So instead of having concrete patios, I just use pea gravel, which drains into the percolation pit. So also locating it acts like a bioswale, but it's a percolation pit. It has to be 10 feet away from the building. And also the soil has to be friable soil and loose, not compacted soil. So there has to be like an amendment to the soil. This is another project which the builder had just kind of filled up the side yard with highly compacted Mexican pebbles. So as part of my work, I removed all the pebbles and also added planting. So I added iris, rushes, and different types of grasses. So you can't see it here, but the iris is towards the open side of the yard. And then the owner wanted some trees, so I think I planted toyon right next to the fence. But if anybody is looking for information on rain gardens, there's a very interesting website. It tells you about the size of the rain garden. You have to give it the depth. So the depth of the rain garden is how depressed the rain garden is. So it could be 8 inches or it could be like 2 feet. We went over the first slide where it shows the depth of the garden. So if it depends on the slope. So it could be like 8 inches or it could be deeper than that, depending on how steep the slope is. Depending on the depth, you can store a lot more water. So it tells you that if you give this to the civil engineer, maybe they can use this as they need to be able to drain away so that their area drains don't need to be like 2 feet by 2 feet, and instead they can use like smaller stormwater drains. Let me see if I can share that website. So does anybody have any questions about rain gardens? Okay, this is the website I was talking about. So it has very nice information on what type of plants, planting a rain garden. They have, the type of soil, planting tips, and also it has the calculator. So they have these interesting plant lists that I think when I was researching the one that I did, so you can see the plant list. There's Arctostaphylos is one of them. There's actually some plants that I would never think about using, some like hydrangeas, lilacs, cotoneaster, which I thought was drought tolerant, but you can use them in rain gardens. And these are all salt spray tolerant plants. And then they have plants by sunny and shady rain gardens. So shady rain gardens can use hackberries. I don't think these are native, but the cornice could be silky dogwood. And also you can check your performance, connections, garden design, performance. So has anybody incorporated rain gardens in their work, in their design?
I have.
This is Kathy Hansen.
Kathy Brenner. I
So
was
what did you-
shocked how much water
Oh,
it
okay,
took.
okay.
It was
What did you?
wonderful.
What were your
Absolutely
like?
amazing. The very first one I did was in the front of a residence, and we did it. And in 2 weeks, we had the biggest rainstorm we had had in a very, very long time. It was a couple of years ago. And so I texted the client, and I was terrified he was going to tell me that his whole front yard was flooded, because I didn't think that it had enough time. I had done the, I forget the name of the other organization that really pushes rain gardens, but they stress the health of the soil so that it's spongy. But we have really hard clay here. So I had put the compost in, I had put the mulch in, and I dug it all up, and I had planted it, and I wanted it to have a little while to get some biology going, and it didn't. We just had this flood of rain. And so I was sure that it would have made a big mess. And he said he kept looking out, and this was taking all the rain off of the roof. And he said he kept looking out, waiting to see a swimming pool, and he never even saw any water come up over the mulch. So, I mean, it just
Oh, wow.
great and continues to
Right.
work great.
A
So
big
that was
sponge.
super exciting. And I
The
didn't
big
I
sponge.
didn't
Imagine if
use
it
any
rained-
gravel or any rock. It was just a big sponge.
Okay.
So that was really,
Yeah,
I
sometimes
felt
when
like
they
I had
say,
done a good deed there, because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I put a lot of water back into and I've done several others, mostly when people want the look of a dry creek bed, because we have no rain in the summer. So I think it's
Yeah.
a little bit different, or, we have to irrigate. But I've done it probably half a dozen front yards where I take the gutter water into what looks like a dry creek bed, in whatever gravel or rock looks good with the rest of the landscape, and then put whatever plants. I usually do bunch grasses at the bottom. I love chondropetalum and stuff like that. And then I'll put, the one tree that we can fit in our front yard on the edge, up on the swale to the side of this, and it makes it all look pretty cool.
Mhm.
Maybe a couple boulders to sit on, and people really like it. It's low maintenance, but I have found that the one plant I used to use and I'm kind of avoiding now is the juncus, because it's not easy for people to maintain.
Yeah, I find like after seeing it in commercial lots where it looks kind of run over, it looks either like there's too much maintenance or there's not enough maintenance. So
Yeah, and it gets bigger than you think it's going to get.
Yeah.
It becomes a beast. Yeah.
This website, the Rain Garden Alliance, they have very interesting tips on how to locate the garden. It has to be a certain distance away from the house, and that's pretty important, because sometimes I see builders, they're so interested in maximizing the house size. They have like these kind of low-lying areas right next to the house,
Mhm.
and it would be a problem for the foundation. You can tell right away that it's not good for the lowest point of the house to be like right next to the foundation of the house.
Yeah,
And
I
then it
just
says-
ran into that last year. So I just bermed that side. I bermed that side of the area.
Yeah, it's
So
like
that there's a
they
berm
just leave
between
it.
the house and the rain garden.
Mhm. There's also tips on the soil type. I didn't realize the soil type is so important. They say like 40% sand so that it drains. It drains well.
But we can't do that here because we will make
Yeah.
concrete.
Hey, I have a question, Ruhina. Is it raingardenalliance.org or
Yeah.
.com? .org, okay.
Yeah, .org. And then somebody else sent a link. Somebody sent a link on the Bay Area rain garden design.
Yeah, hi. There's a designer up north of San Francisco. I think she's coming out of Marin, April Uncaffer, and she has a book with another co-author, Creating Rain Gardens, and it's got a lot of
Oh, okay.
very technical discussions.
Oh, okay.